Imagine sitting in a quiet room with a group of strangers. On the wall in front of you are three vertical lines. Next to them is a single line. Your task is simple. Say which of the three lines matches the single one in length. The answer is obvious. So obvious, in fact, that a child could get it right. Now imagine every person in the room gives the same answer. And it's wrong. Completely wrong. The line clearly doesn't match, but they all say it does. Then it's your turn. What do you say? This wasn't a trick question for entertainment. It was a real psychological experiment conducted in the 1950s by psychologist Solomon Asch. The setup was almost laughably simple. Participants believed they were part of a study about visual perception. They were placed in a group and asked to state their answers aloud, one by one. What they didn't know was that everyone else in the room was an actor, and their job was to intentionally give the wrong answer on certain trials. Scientists expected minor influence at most. After all, the correct answer was sitting right there in front of them. There was no ambiguity, no complex math, no moral dilemma, just lines on a wall. The assumption was clear. When reality is obvious, people will trust their own eyes. At first, everything went smoothly. The group gave correct answers. The participant felt comfortable, confident, relaxed. The task felt easy, almost boring. And then, without warning, the actors began to agree on the same wrong answer. One after another, calmly and confidently, they chose a line that clearly didn't match. No one laughed, no one hinted at uncertainty. They simply stated the incorrect choice as if it were fact. Now it was the participant's turn. There's a pause in moments like that, a subtle shift in the air. The participant looks at the lines again. The correct answer is still obvious, but something else becomes louder. The awareness of being the only one who sees it differently. A quiet thought begins to form. Did I misjudge it? Another follows. They can't all be wrong. Then, maybe I'm the one who's mistaken. That is the psychological crack. The eyes haven't changed, the lines haven't moved, reality is still the same, but the social pressure is stronger than expected. And in that moment, many participants did something scientists did not predict. They conformed. About 1/3 of responses were incorrect when the group gave the wrong answer. Roughly 75% of participants conformed at least once. Not because they were confused about the task, not because the lines were hard to compare, but because standing alone against a unanimous group felt harder than saying something they knew was wrong. This became known as the Asch conformity experiment, and what disturbed researchers wasn't just the statistics, it was the internal conflict participants described afterward. Some admitted they knew the answer was wrong but didn't want to appear different. They didn't want to disrupt the group. They feared embarrassment. They feared isolation. So they agreed, even while internally disagreeing. Others reported something even more unsettling. They began to doubt their own perception. When faced with unanimous opposition, their confidence in their own senses weakened. They genuinely wondered whether their eyes were deceiving them. Think about that for a moment. Nothing about reality changed. Only the social environment did, and yet perception itself began to bend. This is the power of conformity. Psychologists later explained it through two mechanisms. The first is normative conformity, the desire to fit in. Humans are social creatures. Rejection feels threatening. Even mild social disapproval activates the same regions of the brain associated with physical pain. Standing alone against a group doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels unsafe. The second is informational conformity, the belief that the group might know something you don't. When everyone else agrees, the brain assumes there must be information you're missing. Doubt creeps in quietly, confidence erodes, and reality becomes negotiable. What makes this experiment so disturbing is how subtle the pressure was. There were no threats, no rewards, no authority figures giving commands, just people answering questions in a room, and that was enough. Now zoom out.
How often does this happen outside a laboratory? In meetings where no one speaks up, in classrooms where students stay silent, on social media where opinions shift because a majority appears certain, in everyday life where disagreeing feels riskier than complying. The pressure is rarely dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible. You don't feel forced, you feel outnumbered. And when everyone around you seems confident, your own certainty begins to shrink. The Asch experiment revealed something scientists underestimated. Humans don't just fear being wrong, they fear being alone. Social harmony can outweigh objective truth. Agreement can feel safer than accuracy. And the most unsettling part? Many of the participants who conformed weren't weak, they weren't unintelligent. They were ordinary people placed in an ordinary situation, just like you. So imagine that room again. 3 lines on a wall. A simple, obvious answer. Everyone else calmly choosing the wrong one. No anger, no chaos, just quiet confidence. Your heart beats a little faster. Your mouth feels dry. You glance at the lines once more. You know what you see, but you also know what they're saying. In that moment, the question isn't about vision anymore. It's about belonging. And here's the question that lingers long after the experiment ended. If everyone around you says you're wrong, would you trust your eyes or the crowd?